He's been awake since before the sun, not because someone told him to, because this is who he is now. His name doesn't matter. It never did. What matters is the number on his collar, the unit on his shield, and the 30 kilograms on his back. 30 kilograms. That's not a metaphor. That's armor. That's iron. That's a wooden shield, the width of a door. That's tools to dig, stakes to build, food to last 3 days, and weapons to kill with at the end of all of it. He is not a hero. He is a Roman legionary. And today, like every day for the last 11 years, he will march. Most people think they know what a Roman soldier was. The movies gave them that image: gleaming armor, epic speeches, dramatic last stands. But the real thing was quieter, harder, more human. This is what it was actually like: to wake up inside the most powerful military machine the ancient world ever built, and do it all over again tomorrow. The first thing you notice, before you open your eyes, is the smell. 8 men in a leather tent. No ventilation. The kind of smell that has a texture to it. Sweat and iron and wet wool and the cold ash of last night's fire. By the 3rd year, you stop noticing it. By the 10th, it smells like home. This is the contubernum. 8 men. 1 tent. 1 mule to carry it. 1 shared cooking pot. 1 shared set of grinding stones. 1 shared understanding that the man next to you is the only reason you're still alive. The Romans didn't build their army on glory. They built it on this, on 8 men who ate together, slept together, buried each other. You wake before dawn, not to a trumpet, though that comes later. You wake because Lucius, who sleeps on your left, always kicks in his sleep, and Marcus, on your right, has been coughing since the crossing of the Danube 3 weeks ago. You know the sound of every man in this tent, their breathing, their nightmares, the exact way each one of them gets up in the morning. Before you do anything else, you check your feet. This is not optional. This is survival. A blister ignored becomes an infection. An infection in the field becomes a death sentence. The medical tent is 3 rows back. You've seen what happens to the men who wait too long to go there. You pull on your caligy, iron hobnailed sandals, heavier than they look, louder than you'd expect on stone roads, and the single most important piece of equipment you own, not your gladius, not your pilum, your sandals. Because without them, you don't march. And if you don't march, you're nothing. The camp around you is already moving. A Roman castrum, a fortified camp built from scratch at the end of every single day of March, is not a temporary thing. It is a small city, erected in under 2 hours by 10,000 men who have done it so many times that no one needs to be told where to go. Ditch first, earth wall second, stakes third, 4 gates, always facing the same directions. Your tent, always in the same position relative to the commanders. Order isn't something the Roman army imposes on the world. It's something the Roman army carries inside itself, moves with, sleeps inside, rebuilds every single evening from nothing. You pick up your pack, 30 kilograms. You've weighed it. You know every item in it by feel in the dark. The entrenching tool, the saw, the carrying pole, the rations, hard wheat biscuit, a lump of cured pork fat, a small amphora of sour wine called posca that you've learned to drink without making a face. The trumpet sounds. You stand up straight, not because you feel like it, because 11 years of this have made standing up straight the default position of your body. You walk out into the cold morning air, Fall into your position in the column, and you begin. The march is its own world, not a journey between places. A place in itself, with its own rhythm, its own sounds, its own rules that exist nowhere else on Earth. The column moves at 4 miles per hour, 20 miles a day on a normal march, more when the commander decides it's necessary. You don't decide when it's necessary. You just move, left foot, right foot. The iron hobnails of 10,000 caligae on a Roman road, a sound that carries for miles before the army appears. Local farmers hear it and close their shutters. Village dogs fall silent. The earth itself seems to understand something is coming. You carry your own weight. Always your own weight. That's 30 kilograms on your back, your shield on your left arm, your pilum, a heavy iron-tipped throwing spear, balanced on your right shoulder. The pilum alone weighs over 2 kilograms. After the first hour, you stop feeling it as a separate thing and start feeling it as an extension of your arm that happens to be made of iron and wood and quiet lethality. The veterans told you something back in your first year of training. They said, the march will kill you before the battle ever does. They weren't wrong. Not literally. Though men did fall. Summer heat on southern roads, when the sun came straight down and the dust came straight up and the water ran out 2 hours before the next river. But what they meant was something else. What they meant was that the march is where the soldier is made or broken, not in the moment of combat, in the 10,000th step of the 15th day of a march through rain and mud with boots that haven't been dry in a week. That's where you find out who you are. Training had tried to prepare you for this. Back in the beginning, before you were sent to a legion, you trained with weapons heavier than the ones you'd actually use. A wooden sword, twice the weight of a gladius. A practice shield, twice the weight of your real one. The logic was simple and brutal. Make the real thing feel light. Make the actual battle feel easier than what you've already survived. It works. Eventually. The first months you trained until your hands bled, until your shoulders stopped functioning as shoulders and became something closer to raw complaint. You ran in full equipment. You swam in full equipment. You dug in full equipment because the entrenching tool was not a symbol. It was a weapon, and the castrum you built every evening was the thing that kept you alive while you slept. The Roman army didn't win because its soldiers were braver than everyone else. It won because its soldiers were more prepared than everyone else, more organized, more relentless in the ordinary things, the digging, the marching, the maintenance, the discipline of doing the same thing the same way 10,000 times until it required no thought at all. Bravery is unpredictable. Discipline isn't. And somewhere around the 5th hour of this morning's march, when your shoulders are burning and the road ahead looks exactly like the road behind, you understand something the recruiting officer never told you. You understand why Rome wins, not because of the generals, because of this, because of 10,000 men who get up before dawn, pick up 30 kilograms, and walk. There is a moment, somewhere in the middle of the afternoon, when the march stops. Not because you've arrived anywhere, not because the enemy is near, because the human body, even a Roman soldier's body, has limits, and the commanders who built this machine understood those limits better than the men inside it did. You stop, you drink, you eat. The meal is not ceremonial. Hard wheat biscuit, bucellatum, that you break with your back teeth because biting it straight on is how you lose a filling, a scrape of pork fat on top if you have it, a cup of posca, that sour vinegar wine mixture that tastes like punishment but keeps you from getting sick when the water sources can't be trusted, which is most of the time. This is the diet that built an empire, not banquets, not roasted meats, not the elaborate spreads that the senators were eating in Rome at this exact moment. 3 weeks' march behind you. Just wheat, fat, sour wine, day after day after day. The army consumed grain on a scale the ancient world had never seen before. Historians estimate a single legion, 5,000 men, needed roughly 80 tons of grain every month to keep moving. The logistics of feeding a Roman army on campaign were as complex and as essential to victory as any battle strategy. Without the supply chain, the greatest army in the world stops in 3 days. You know this without knowing the numbers. You know it because you felt it. The one time, 2 years ago, when the supply wagons didn't arrive and the rations ran to half and then to nothing, and you watched 10,000 disciplined soldiers become 10,000 hungry men, which is a different thing entirely. But today, the supply held. Today you eat your biscuit and you drink your posca, and you sit on the ground with your back against your pack, and you do something that surprises people who imagine a soldier's life as constant violence and motion. You rest. Marcus is already asleep, sitting upright, chin on his chest. Lucius is writing something on a small wooden tablet. A letter home, maybe, or a record of something he doesn't want to forget. You've seen men in this army who could read and write better than some of the merchants back in the cities. The legions had their own record keepers, their own engineers, their own doctors. You are not merely a weapon pointed at something. You are part of a system, a vast, breathing, grinding system that moves across the landscape of the world and leaves roads and walls and cities in its wake. The road you marched on this morning, that perfect, flat, stone-paved road that runs straight as a thought across 100 miles of wilderness, was built by soldiers like you in years before you were born, by men whose names are as forgotten as yours will be. They built it anyway. You look at your hands, calloused from the pilum shaft, scarred at the knuckle from training drills that drew blood before they made you better, permanently rough in the way that hands get rough when they have been used every day for years for work that actually matters. Your stipendium, your salary, is paid 3 times a year, and from that salary, before you see a single coin, the army deducts your food, your equipment, your tent, your share of the burial fund, because the legions made provision, even for death, even for the men who didn't make it, even for the ones who would die in a place so far from home that no one who loved them would ever find the grave. The trumpet sounds again. You get up, you pick up 30 kilograms, and you walk. By the time the column stops for the night, your body has become a single, long argument against continuing. Your shoulders have stopped burning and entered something beyond burning, a deep, structural complaint that lives in the bone rather than the muscle. Your feet, inside the caligae, are a separate conversation entirely. You don't look at them until you have to. Looking makes it worse. But here is the thing about a Roman soldier at the end of a 20-mile march. He doesn't stop. The trumpet sounds, not the one that means rest, but the one that means build. And 10,000 men who have just walked 20 miles in full equipment drop their packs. pick up their entrenching tools, and begin constructing a fortified city from nothing. This is the castrum, and it is not optional. The ditch comes first, 2 meters wide, 1.5 meters deep, dug by hand, in formation, with tools you carried on your own back for 20 miles. The earth from the ditch becomes the wall behind it, packed, compressed, shaped into a rampart that will stop a cavalry charge. On top of the rampart go the stakes, the palisade, that you also carried, sharpened wood that you cut and carried and now hammer into position with hands that stopped feeling cooperative 3 hours ago. 4 gates, always facing the same cardinal directions. The commander's tent always at the center. Your tent always in the same position relative to everything else. In the dark, in a strange country, in terrain you've never seen before, you could walk to your tent blindfolded. That is not an accident. That is the point. The castrum could be built in under 2 hours by a legion that had done it enough times, and they had always done it enough times, every single night of every march, regardless of weather, regardless of exhaustion, regardless of whether the enemy was 2 miles away or 200. The discipline was the defense. The routine was the weapon. When it's done, you finally sit. The fire is small, fuel is never wasted, and the cooking pot goes on before anyone speaks. The meal is wheat, boiled into a thick paste with whatever the foragers found today. Sometimes a handful of lentils, occasionally a scrap of dried meat. Always the pasca, always the same pot, the same 8 men, the same arrangement around the fire that you settled into sometime in the 2nd year without anyone deciding it. Lucius always sits closest to the flame. He's from the north, somewhere cold and green that he describes sometimes, late at night, when the fire is low and the wine is gone and the talking becomes something else, something quieter. Marcus reads his tablet by firelight, lips moving slightly. You eat in silence, not the silence of men who have nothing to say, the silence of men who have said everything already, who know each other so completely that words have become optional, a courtesy rather than a necessity. This is what the historians miss when they write about Roman military strategy. They write about formations, about the genius of the testudo, shields locked overhead like the shell of a vast tortoise, advancing through arrow fire, about the pilum, designed so that its iron neck would bend on impact, making the enemy's shield too heavy to lift, about the gladius, the short, stabbing sword, perfect for close quarters, the weapon that ended empires. They're not wrong about any of it, but they miss the contubernium. They miss the 8 men around the fire, because the testudo only works if every man trusts the man beside him completely, trusts that the shield will be there, that the step will be taken, that when the moment comes, the person on your left will not flinch. That trust is not built in battle. It's built here, in the daily sameness of the cooking pot and the shared tent, and the particular way Lucius always takes the first watch without being asked. Rome didn't conquer the world with iron. It conquered the world with this, with ordinary men, in ordinary moments, choosing, again and again, to show up for each other. There is one thing about this life that no one tells you before you sign. 25 years. That is the length of a Roman legionary's service contract. Not 5, not 10, 25 years. From the moment you raise your hand and swear the sacramentum, the military oath that binds you to the emperor, to the legion, to the men beside you, with a seriousness that has no modern equivalent. This is not a job. It is not a career. It is a transformation, a complete and total remaking of who you are, from the inside out. You enlisted at 18. You will be 43 when they release you, if they release you, because the 25 years assumes you survive. It assumes you don't die of fever in a marsh campaign. It assumes the supply wagons keep arriving. It assumes the man beside you in the testudo holds his position. A lot of assumptions stacked on top of each other across a quarter century of marching and building and waiting and occasionally, briefly, violently, fighting. But here is what they also don't tell you. You will be paid, not well, by the standards of the senators whose wars you fight, but steadily, reliably, in coin that is real and that the empire will honor. The stipendium arrives 3 times a year, deductions already taken, and what remains is yours. Some men gamble it away the same night. Some men send it home, tablets of thin wood, written in a soldier's careful hand, containing money and news and requests. One tablet found by archaeologists, preserved by the cold of a northern frontier, contains a soldier's letter home asking for 2 things, socks and more money for food. 2,000 years later, those words are still legible, still recognizable, still completely, disarmingly human. If you've made it this far, through the march, through the castrum, through the cooking pot, and the sacramentum, and the letter about socks, you're the kind of person who actually wants to know how people lived. Not the emperors, not the generals, the people. Subscribe. There's a new world waiting every week. Because what strikes you, sitting with these men around this fire, in this fortified camp in the middle of a landscape that Rome has not yet fully claimed, what strikes you is not the violence, it's the waiting. The Roman soldier spent the vast majority of his service not fighting, not marching toward battle, not locked in the dramatic confrontations that fill the paintings and the films and the popular imagination. He spent it waiting, patrolling, maintaining, building the roads, the walls, the aqueducts, the frontier forts, the infrastructure of an empire that would outlast every man who built it by 1,000 years. And in the waiting, he wrote letters. He played dice with the men in his contubernium. Archaeologists have found the dice, small and bone-carved, in the ruins of frontier forts from Britain to Syria. He complained about the food. He got sick and recovered and got sick again. He had opinions about his centurion that he kept to himself, mostly. He celebrated the festivals of the military calendar, the birthday of the Eagle Standard, the anniversary of the founding of Rome, with more ceremony than he celebrated his own birthday, because the legion was more real to him now than the village he came from. He sent home for socks. He received them eventually, wrapped in a note from someone who loved him, someone who measured time, not in campaigns, but in the seasons between his letters, who kept a small oil lamp burning in a niche in the wall of a house that smelled nothing like a leather tent. Somewhere between that house and this fire, he became someone else, not less, not broken, something harder and quieter and more durable than the boy who raised his hand at 18. He became the thing that held the world together. The fire is low now. Lucius took the first watch an hour ago. Marcus is asleep, his tablet folded close beside him. The camp is quiet in the way that only 10,000 exhausted men can make a place quiet. A deep, breathing silence that has weight to it, that presses down on the darkness like something solid. You should sleep. You don't. Not yet. There is something about the last hour of the day, this particular hour, after the work is done and before the dreams come, that belongs only to you, not to the legion, not to the emperor, not to the 25 years, just to you and the fire and whatever it is you think about when no one is watching. Maybe you think about home, not the home you left at 18. That place has shifted in your memory, softened at the edges, become something more feeling than fact. The smell of bread from a particular doorway, the sound of a river you haven't heard in 11 years, the face of someone who would not recognize you now if you walked through that door, because the person who would walk through that door is not the person who left. Maybe you think about what comes after. 25 years of service earns you something real, not just the diploma, the bronze discharge certificate that makes your citizenship official. That gives legal standing to your children. That transforms a life of obedience into a legacy of standing. Some men receive land, a plot in a province the empire is still digesting, where you can build something that doesn't need to be torn down every morning, a place you don't have to leave. The thought is so foreign that it arrives almost as a physical sensation. The idea of waking up in the same place 2 days in a row, of sleeping without the trumpet, of building something and walking away and knowing it will still be there when you come back. 14 more years. You do the calculation the same way you do every night in this last quiet hour. 14 more years and 37 more kilograms of salt and approximately 4,000 more miles of road, and somewhere on the other side of all of that, a door, a plot of land, a life that is finally, completely, irrevocably your own. You look at your hands again, the same hands you looked at this afternoon on the road, calloused, scarred, stained with the particular darkness that comes from years of iron and leather and work. They are not the hands you were born with. They are the hands you made, or that this life made, through 10,000 repetitions of things that were hard until they weren't, that hurt until they didn't, that seemed impossible until they became the only thing you knew how to do. Tomorrow, the trumpet will sound before the sun. Tomorrow you will pick up 30 kilograms and walk. Tomorrow Marcus will cough, and Lucius will take first watch without being asked, and the 8 of you will fall into your positions in the column with the automatic precision of men who have become, through sheer repetition, something close to a single organism. But that is tomorrow. Right now, in this last hour, in the amber dark of a dying fire in a camp that will be gone by morning, you are just a man, not a weapon, not a unit, not a number on a collar or a name on a discharge list. A man who walked 20 miles today and built a city at the end of it and fed himself and wrote nothing down because there was no one left at home who remembered his handwriting. A man who is, despite everything, still here. He never made it into the history books. No statue was raised in his name. No speech was written about him. But the road you're marching on tomorrow, the one that runs straight and true across 100 miles of wilderness, that will still be there in 2,000 years, that people will walk on without knowing who cut the stone and laid it and tamped it flat with tired hands. That road is his. Share this with someone who still thinks history is about kings. Leave a comment below. What world do you want to live inside next? We'll be there every week. A new world, waiting. He got through his day, So did a million others like him. So will you.